Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Srini here. And this is my channel, guys. You can just go ahead and subscribe to my channel in YouTube and hit the bell to get notifications. So as I've told you all that this particular playlist, right, we are going to have the Selenium automation framework prerequisites. So we already have seen in the previous session, a session on properties file. Why properties file is so important and how do we use it in a Selenium automation framework, right? So this particular session will be dedicated to a next important essential in a Selenium automation framework. So we are going to go step by step, and that particular topic is nothing but base class. So we are going to see what is a base class, why it is important to be used in a Selenium automation framework, what are the advantages of using a base class. All of them would be clarified in this session. You don't have to worry about or go to any other website or just worry much about researching on that. It's just a simple session and you're going to get all of these concepts clarified. So what is a base class, right? So in an automation framework, right, so you would be having lot of different functionality to be covered in a web application. So let's take an example. So we have this Selenium easy demo application. Similarly, we might have any e-commerce website like something like Amazon.com, eBay, or any banking application for that matter, right? So there will be a lot of different pages. There will be a lot of different elements which are going to be there. Now for each and every element, you cannot create a separate method, right? So let's say if I want to click on input forms, you cannot just create one method for input forms and one method for simple form demo. Similarly, one method for checkbox demo, because all of these operations are click operations, right? We are doing just click. We are not doing anything else extra. Similarly, simple form demo is just doing click. So why do we need to have a separate method for each and every element, right? Instead of that, we can just have one method, one utility method, just to do click operation. So be it any element for that matter, we just have to do click operation. Similarly, let's say if I go to checkbox demo, it's all about again click. So why do I need to have a separate method written just for checkbox doing click? Because again, what I'm doing, I'm just passing the XPath or the locator for this square button, right? And it will be able to click on it. So that is all we need to do. We just have to provide the XPath and it will be able to click on it. Let's take another example. Let's say selecting elements from a drop down. This is another type of element, drop down. So it's not about clicking, it's about selecting a value from a drop down. So of course for this one, we need to write a separate method for selecting a value from a drop down, right? So if you at all you're having another method for selecting multiple options, you can do the same method, do the same action with just some variation, right? You can use method overloading here for selecting the value from a drop down. So the idea here is that whatever such utility methods are there, you just have it in one class. Don't try to have your framework whenever it is required, create the method again. That is not a good practice, right? We should be using code reusability here. So that is why in an automation framework, you should have all your utility methods at one place. So I'll show how it is done. So this is the previous project which we had created, right? We had created a properties file. So I'm going to create one more package for my base class. So yeah, base class I'm going to have as the first package is base package name, and I'm going to have a base class now. Okay, now what we are going to do is that, so if this test homepage demo just homepage.java, right? This was the actual test case file which we had. So whenever we want to do any click operation, right, we were using .click. Rather than doing this way, what we can do is that we can create a utility method in base class which will just do click operation like this way, click element, right? And what you need to do is we need to have WebDriver variable defined here. So we need to have a WebDriver variable defined in the base class. Rather than in test homepage, we are going to have this WebDriver variable as a part of our base class. So we are going to have this entire content actually a part of our base class, because a base class is basically used for having all the common utilities at one place. Rather than in separate places, it should be having everything in one place. So this is how your entire framework needs to be designed. It should have all the important initialization part, the configuration part, whatever we are doing, right? We are trying to launch the browser here. Before that, we want to first read the data from a properties file. So all of such configuration part should be a part of our base class file. Okay, we will just see it one by one. So we are having this configuration part here. We are also having a method, utility method. This is a utility method to read the property from a properties file. Likewise, as I said, we can have, okay, let's talk about the constructor later. We can have one more method like this click element method, and this is just going to find element by dot xpath. Of course, it needs a xpath, so we can get that xpath as a parameter, and you can use that xpath here, or if you want, just mention this as xpath value so that we don't get confused, and just use it here and do the click action. So this is nothing but a common method to click on any element, right? So with this utility method, we can directly use this method whenever we want to click on any particular object or an element in a UI. Now, what else can a base class have? Of course, it can have utility methods like this. It can have the configuration all done like what we have shown here, the configuration part, right? So what happens with base class? Why is it so important, right? Now, what we will do is we will have this test case homepage. It doesn't have any driver variable, and we are not having these methods also. What we are going to do is we are going to use the oops concept. So if you haven't gone across or know Java, you can look at my Java tutorials playlist. So we are going to implement inheritance here. So we're going to use inheritance. So we are saying that test homepage is extending base class. So base class is such a critical part of your framework that all the important configuration or the prerequisites or the utilities should be a part of your base class, and let your all other classes just extend the base class. So I'm going to import the base class here, and you can see some errors have already gone. But this driver variable, we have to change the visibility because it's not visible, because we have given the access modifier for the driver as default. So it's only limited access to this base package. So let's make it public. And properties file also, let's make it public. Okay, so let's come back. Now you can see the errors have gone because it's extending base class. It already has got this initial config, the driver values and everything, so there is no error at all. So it should be still be able to execute what we wanted to do. So let's just try to run this particular project and let's see how power this base class is given to this framework now, because we have just taken out the important part and we have moved it to another class called base class.java. So we have done the configuration part and reading the property and even this click method. So we are going to use this click element method. So let's use this method. Okay, so by.xpath.click, right? So this was basically giving the option of okay, what we can do is we can just use the click element, right? And we can pass it as a, or we can do one more thing. Rather than doing this one, we can make this store the parameter of web element. So we need not even do this entire syntax writing part. We can just directly say element.click and just import this web element. This makes it more simpler. And here we just have to pass this entire value as a parameter. So we are going to use this click element method like this and pass this driver.find element. This entire is nothing but a web element. So click element, and we are passing the entire web element here. So it will be nothing but doing the action of clicking on the element. And we are going to have the same part mentioned here as well. So this is how your base class can basically do your configuration part also, and it can just even be used for doing utility methods. So now I've used a utility method. It will be doing the action of clicking on the element. So let's run this particular program and let's look at the output. So we'll just run it. So it's launching the browser, right? Application is loaded, and now it should click on input forms and then radio buttons demo. So this is how the same action, whatever we have done through our previous session, we have replicated here, but now through usage of base class. So that is why I had kept these two sessions back to back, so that you would be able to understand and relate between the two, how base class is playing a critical role here. Now, one more important thing, right? We'll go one step further. Why base class is so important, we will understand that now. It is also important to maintain the session, because now if you're using a page object model, you will be having a lot of pages. So what I'll do is I'll be creating another package called pages, and we are going to see page object model separately, but I'll just show you one simple example. So what we'll do is we'll have a page called home page, and we'll have another page called not package, sorry, another file, another Java file that is for radio buttons demo, because these are the two classes we are interacting currently, right? Now what happens for these two classes? So these two classes also are going to extend the base class. So look at what happens now. The entire framework is ready, right? Your entire framework is ready. You just have to extend the base class. So you don't have to rewrite the entire code which is written here, like clicking on an element or reading the property from a properties file, or let's say launching the doing the configuration part of reading or loading the properties file. So all of them, all of that kind of actions are already part of base class. You just have to use the methods which are nothing but automatically accessible by their respective classes, right? We did not create any object, or we even were not required to define any method separately. We just had to call it, and it, when you do a mouse over, it shows it is referred from a base class, because we are using inheritance concept here. So all of our classes in our framework have to extend the base class. That's the only simple idea behind designing the framework and using the base class. It just saves the code, right? It doesn't have any code redundancy. It will reduce the code duplicacy, and it will store everything in just one common area. So if you want to change anything, if anything as such has to be changed, it will just be in the base class. Maybe it could be something like adding a new utility method, because we're not storing any locators here. We are going to have all the locators as a part of our config properties file. So we don't have to worry about the locators part also. The base class will only be changed if we want to write any new method, right? And sometimes even for some of the frameworks, what people do is that, I'll just tell you what they exactly do. So rather than having this test home page before method and after method, they just copy this entire, this put this entire path as a part of the base class also. This also is fine. It's all up to you how you want to design your framework. You can also have this as a part of your base class, at the rate before method and at the rate after method. So just let have the particular test home page have only the at the rate test and all the test cases methods only, and remaining you can just keep it as a part of your base class. This is also perfectly fine. So what is going to happen now, right? All the classes, which is nothing but extending the base class, I've made all of the classes extend the base class. You can see test home page is extending base class. The radio buttons demo is also extending the base class. So we are going to see in detail the entire framework, don't worry. I'm just explaining you the advantages of why we need to use a base class, right? Even the test home page is extending the base class. So before we execute this at the rate test method, it has to execute something prerequisite for this test method, right? That you might be thinking is not defined here already, but it is there because it is extending base class. Automatically, it has got these two methods, setup method and quit app method, because it has done inheritance with respect to base class. So it has got these methods automatically. So we don't have to do anything now. Now I'll again run this entire particular project and show you. Right? So it is able to do the same action, and the test case has passed. You can look at the test case now. Failures are 0, and it has got the application title. You can even look at the test ng reports. Everything is passed, and you can refresh this project to get your complete test ng report. So test output folder is generated, and you can look at this index.html, which will have a graphical representation of the test cases. So this is how your base class can be used in your framework. So I've just shown an example that if you're using a page object model, then how it is going to be. But there is some variety to that, because in page object model, it will have its own locators. So we will not be using config properties in that scenario. So this is how the test ng report would look like, right? So the pass methods. So what I was talking about is that, so if you come back to this particular project, right? Page object model prerequisite project. Here I had just wanted to explain you all different concepts. So I've taken first the properties file, then the base class concept, how it is used. And for object repository purpose, I have taken config properties as one of the examples. So we are going to look at that as the next topic, object repository in a framework, right? So, but if you're using a page object model design approach for your particular framework, then you will have the elements, web elements defined as a part of the same class. That would be a separate session, so don't worry about that now. So you would not have config properties file in that scenario. So since I wanted to explain these concepts as a part of the same project, I have made like this. But if you have this pages kind of a package, then you would not have config.properties as a part of your config package, because these all locators. So you can still have config properties file, but these locators would not be there in your config properties, because they would be a part of your page object model. Different individual pages would be storing their individual elements. So for example, home page will be having, so if I go to demo home, right? So your home page is going to have these individual elements separately. Similarly, your radio buttons form is going to have the elements of the radio button form, like male, female, get checked value, etc. So those all are not going to be part of your config properties file. So these two will be taken out if you are using both together, pages as well as config properties together, right? So let's just summarize what we have seen, and let's go back to our slide as well. So we have seen what is a base class, right? So base class is nothing but a class. We are going to store our initial configuration part, we are going to load it, and we are going to have all of our Java classes extend the base class. So we're going to use inheritance concept, right? And where exactly it is used? It is used for framework, right? For a framework, this is going to serve as a main class, and we are going to have our other classes extend the base class. How useful it is, we have already seen with an example now. It is so useful because it will save your code duplicacy, all those issues will be resolved. You are going to have everything stored into one particular class. You're going to have the utility methods available. So you can just have the code made more reusable, more cleaner, and more separated, rather than having messy and every class having the same thing repeated. We are going to have everything dedicatedly a separate class file. And why is it so useful? Because you can have the driver session also maintained. So whenever you want to navigate from one page to another, often we look at that there will be some kind of sync issues, right? So there will be some kind of sync issues when we try to navigate from one page to another, because the driver, we might get some exception like null pointer exception with respect to driver. But this base class, it solves that issue also. When you actually start creating a framework, you will understand this part. This base class is just having one variable called WebDriver. No other class needs to have a driver variable, because they will be getting this driver variable automatically when they extend the base class. So they are just going to continue with the same driver session. So there will not be any issues like null pointer exception, etc. when you use this base class concept. So I hope this session was useful to you all, and if it is, do share your comments and like this particular video, and just share with your friends as well. So in the next session, we are going to look at another important concept, that is how to create an object repository in Selenium. So stay tuned for that video. See you in the next lecture. Bye. Thank you.